Welcome to Mastering Agility. If you want to listen to authentic conversations with the most inspiring guests, find like-minded people in the Mastering Agility Discord community, or both online and face-to-face events, this is the platform for you. Grab a drink, sit back, and join professional Scrum trainers Sander Dorr, Jim Sammons, and their guests in an all-new episode.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and wherever you're listening to us from. Today, I'm really excited to talk to Toby about a couple topics near and dear to my heart. So, Toby, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here.
And can you give the listeners a little bit of background about who you are and why you and I are chatting today?
Sure. I'm Tobias Mende. I go by Toby. I'm originally from Germany and have a background in software engineering, technical leadership, product leadership. And since a couple of years, I'm consulting software startups in building high-performing engineering organizations. And that's also why we are talking today, because we are talking about making better decisions in teams. And that's something that's very important for engineering organizations who often struggle with that, at least at the lower levels. And yeah, that's why we're talking today.
And my intrepid co-host, Sander, is not here today. He's dealing with a minor inner ear issue, which makes recording, painful and difficult. So you're speaking at a conference that's coming up pretty soon. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. That's the Online Scrum Master Summit. It's a free online conference happening in June. And everybody can join. It's an international conference, English speaking. And I'm talking about exactly this topic. So if it's interesting for you, join in. You can sign up now. Still, I think we have over 1,500 signups so far. And it will be an exciting event.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll share links to sign up and register in the show notes as well, and we'll be sure to not give away the entire punchline and spoilers of your conference talk. But so decision making is something. Just before we hit record, you and I were talking with that. I see every team, every company struggling with this, but some more than others. So, is there an underlying pattern that you see that as soon as you see it or hear it, you're like, this is the same old problem I've seen many other places? Or is it a variety of causes that make decisions difficult?
I would say it's a variety of causes, but one clear sign is when we have people in an organization who say, I need to ask this person, or this person needs to make the decision, because clearly they need the decision and they have most of the input. So why can they not make the decision? Or why can we not make decisions in a way that they can drive it without handing it off to the manager or the CTO or whoever might be the one who can call the shots? That's one thing. And the other thing is when people just don't have enough information and they feel they are not able to make decisions because they have no clarity about where they are going, why they are doing their job. The vision and strategy and mission part is very important for people to be able to make decisions. And usually what I see is that in most companies, people are not aware on the management level how many decisions are made every day by engineers, by teams, and so on. And often, if we don't have clarity about where we are going, we end up in endless discussions in the teams. What's the right way? Because if we don't know the goal, every path looks equally good most of the time.
Right. So you mentioned two big topics. Let's cover them separately. So one is that vision, mission, strategy link. The other one is access to data. So talk to me about the teams not having access to data, or maybe in some cases, I've actually seen them have access to too much data, which can be paralyzing to make a decision. So what do you see when you're working with teams?
I see more the case of not having enough data or not having access to enough data. For example, if we want to make good decisions, we need to have insights into the financials of the company. And in most companies, teams don't have that. We sometimes even don't know our cloud bill in an engineering team. So we don't even know if we change something and price go up. We only hear that maybe months later because somebody in finance says, hey, why is this so expensive? And then the mistake already happened. And That's one thing. And the other thing is, of course, it's not only about having access to data, but also to be able to derive information from that. So if we don't know where we want to be with some metrics, for example, if we don't know how many signups we want per month, the number is meaningless to us. It's a data point that confuses us, but we don't know, is this good? Is this bad? What are we aiming for? And that can also lead to optimizing for the wrong thing, which then goes back to what's our vision, what's our strategy, what do we want to achieve this year or maybe in 5 years, so that we can optimize for that and then figure out which is the right data we need to understand if we are moving in the right direction.
I love these examples. And the first one, you're talking about a team not understanding the financial impact of making a decision. I can assume that many times they just either don't know who to ask that question of, or the answer they get is, well, I don't think I can tell you that, or I'm not allowed to tell you that. Every time I've had that happen and help them challenge, you really can't tell me the financial impact of making this decision. It's always been a solvable issue. Is that what you find, where when teams go to try and find this information out, whether it's about finances or something else, that it's readily available and they just, are they falling victim to maybe an assumption that they're not allowed? Or what do you see as the cause of that? Because it seems so simple, right? Like, of course, if we're going to make a technical change, we should understand the cost of our technical change.
Yeah. For me, the main reason is that most companies are built in a way that isn't really supporting the cause. And what I mean by this is that most managers share information on a need-to-know basis, because we don't want to overwhelm the people with too much information, kind of. But we are terrible, actually, at making a good decision about what kind of information is important to the people, because we don't know at the time we have the information. So what would make more sense is to be in a default to open mode. So we make the data available. People who need it can get it easily. It's maybe in our knowledge base. It's maybe we give them access to the cost bill of AWS or whatever they are using. And then people can look into it when they are interested. And then they can also ask better questions about what they are seeing. And we can have a conversation about, hey, I saw our cloud bill went up by 1,000 euros last month. Is this okay? And maybe the answer is yes, this is. Or maybe the answer is no, actually, we should not do that because we don't have enough customers to support that, or whatever the reason is. But that's also another topic that most teams don't really have insights in. How many customers do we have? What do we charge them? How much money do we make? And then it's very difficult to understand an expense of 10,000 euros, for example. Is that a problem or not? For a person, for an individual, 10,000 or 100,000 euros sounds like a lot of money. But for a company, it might be just a very small number. But we need to see the relation.
Have you ever ran into the case where you'll be suggesting things like this and the team will be like, I don't want to care about any of that. Like that's not my job. That's not why I'm here. I just want to write code. I just want to build products. And they actively kind of stay ignorant of those things that would actually help them make decisions. Have you seen that? Or is that just another unique gym thing?
No, I wouldn't say it's a unique gym thing. I rarely have seen entire teams being against the idea, but I have seen some people being against this. And because, of course, this means more responsibility, it means I need to think about more things. But the question is also why we are giving this to them. And I think for most people, it's very exciting to know that their work matters and to understand that they are doing good work. And for many people, it's just not possible to tell that. They are getting up in the morning, they are writing some code, and they do this 5 days a week. And when you ask them what's the customer impact of what you did, they don't know. And I think that's very disappointing, and that's not very motivating. And that's the thing. But the reason why many people are afraid of making decisions, first of all, it takes more energy, and also they might be blamed for that. That then ties back to psychological safety in the organization. Can we make decisions, and is it okay to make mistakes? Because mistakes will happen. We will make decisions where we learn later that we would have decided or should have better decided otherwise. And that has to be okay. But in many organizations, it's not. And then people are afraid that if they make decisions and the decisions turn out not to go in the right direction, they are punished for it in one way or the other.
Yeah.
Both Jim and I are experienced consultants and trainers. Therefore, we know how important it is for organizations to have the fundamentals in place before delivering high-value products. And this starts with understanding the theory behind whatever framework, method, or process organizations apply. And this is where Zebia comes in. Zebia is a pioneering software engineering and IT consultancy company, transforming and executing at the intersection of domain and technology to create digital leaders for our people, clients, partners, and communities. As a gift for our Mastering Agility audience, they provided us with a discount code MA10 when signing up for their open enrollment classes to get 10% off. Go to zebia.com/academy to find the entire curriculum of courses. That is Zebia, XEBIA.com/academy to find all their courses.
I'm curious, how many years would you say you've been in the tech industry as a whole?
Probably 15 years by now.
Okay. So I'm curious, over that 15 years, would you say that the psychological safety on average that you see with teams, people, clients you work with, is it increasing? Is it decreasing? Or is it staying the same?
I would say it got a lot better in the beginning because we work more in agile ways. We have retrospectives. We are more open in teams. We bring ourselves more to work. But then I think also it got a serious hit maybe around 2021, 2022, when there were a lot of layoffs, because that kind of eroded the trust and destroyed the psychological safety for many companies, because people now don't feel the safety anymore they had built up over time. So I think we saw a setback in the last couple of years. What do you think?
Yes, and it's interesting because you bring up a point I've made on here many times, which is the relationship between the overall industry and the job market and the world on psychological safety, which is, by no means a revolutionary idea, but I find it's much easier to feel safe and to challenge things and to ask questions and to maybe be okay with the decision you make not turning out well if you feel like, well, if the worst happens, I can go work somewhere else. Yeah. Or maybe my boss isn't afraid of things, so we can all do the right thing. Mm-hmm. So when there's a bountiful tech industry, I think it's a natural assumption that psychological safety will at least be a tiny bit easier to build. But it's not at all surprising to me that in scarce times, which we're in right now, it's going to be very, very low by default, and it's going to be very difficult to make improvements because everybody I know, from seasoned experts with 25, 30 years under their belt to 1 or 2 year experienced people, are not feeling very safe whatsoever. They're very much in the tell me what you want me to do mindset. Their number one goal seems to be to keep their job if they have one, or to get their job if they don't have one. And I think that leads to some predictable behaviors, which don't relate very well to decision making, because making any decision, I don't care how inconsequential it may seem, almost always has the risk of turning out wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Even if it's like where you and I want to go to eat dinner tonight, there's a chance, even if we choose that we're going to go to a restaurant we've been to before and had a good experience, that we could have a bad experience. And we might say to ourselves, or our group or party or spouse or partner might say to us, this was dumb, we shouldn't have came here. Yeah, well, we made a decision with the best information.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I do think right now in the last 3 to 4 years, it is definitely decreased. And I wonder if you think that the connection between layoffs and psychological safety is a direct connection. Like, did companies get too big, too bloated, and lay people off because there was too much of a focus on psychological safety?
You mean the psychological safety being kind of the reason for the layoffs?
Not the direct reason, but an indirect. So let me expand just slightly. There's a lot of people out there who have told me that the reason people like you and I and Agilists and all this are kind of feeling like we're fighting an uphill battle right now is so many people were soft and fluffy and talked about psychological safety and singing Kumbaya all the time, and that companies grew weary of that type of non-value adding mentality. And that could be why some of them were let go. And honestly, practically, I see it too. Like, my number one job is to help companies deliver.
Yeah.
To help teams, people, companies deliver. And that does mean I have to know about things like psychological safety and some of these softer core skills, but not at the expense of practical and pragmatic skills, right? I think it's about blending those things all together.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the psychological safety is the means to an end. I mean, yeah, we want that, and we want to feel as humans in the job, and it should be enjoyable to work in that job and feel safe. But ultimately, in the end, we need to do the job. That's what we are there for. We need to deliver. And I think what people often don't see is that psychological safety is a direct requirement for that. To make better decisions, we need to be able to speak open, to bring up radical ideas, to challenge each other's ideas, to discuss things in a group together, and to make a decision together, kind of, and also taking risky bets belongs to that, like doing experiments. And if we cannot do that, we are back into the top down. Somebody tells me what I have to do on the task level at best, so that I just follow orders, and that's frustrating, but also it will not lead to the best outcome. It will not be the highest performance the team can have. So the value delivery suffers from that. So that's what I think. But I also agree with you that in some companies that I've seen over the past, it went too much into one side. First, we didn't care about the social parts at all and treated like humans as parts of a machine. And then we went into this, oh yeah, we are a happy family, and everybody needs to feel good, and we don't make unpopular decisions, and we don't move forward. Like, for example, we only move forward if everybody agrees. Like the consensus approach might work sometimes, but it often doesn't lead to high performance because teams are stuck in this. We discuss it until we have a option that everybody likes, and that's not always possible, not always the best way.
So the second aspect you mentioned about this was the connection of mission, vision, and strategy to decision making. So can you give me some details about that concept?
Yeah. So of course, like probably everybody has heard about vision and strategy by now. So very briefly, vision is for me just the North Star. How do we want the world to look like, right? And the strategy is what are we doing to get there, kind of. And the strategy for me is basically decision-making framework. So it gives us heuristics that help us to make better decisions. And if we are disagreeing as a team and discussing should we move there or there, ideally we pull out the strategy and it helps us to make an informed decision. If we don't have that, we are all back to our opinions and to data, but also to our opinions on how to interpret the data. And that's where we then turn in circles, and nobody can say, okay, this is right or this is wrong, because we just have different opinions. We value, maybe one person says we need to reduce costs, like we need to have low costs. The other person says, no, we need to scale fast. And then if you don't have a strategy that says we are optimizing for scale, then you don't know how to navigate that and how to make the decision. So it is back, like if you take an abstract example, if we don't know where we want to go, like what kind of address we want to put in our navigation system, right? Then we don't know, should we turn right or left here? And with strategy and vision, it's kind of the same thing. If we don't know that, we don't know where to go.
Mastering Agility only partners with organizations aligned with our values, and that's exactly why we're excited to work with our sponsor, Scrum Match. Scrum Match is a recruiting platform created for and run by true Scrum Masters and product owners. On Scrum Match, true Scrum Masters and product owners get hired by companies serious about creating more value faster using professional Scrum and product ownership. Right now, they're hiring for a client with exciting Scrum Master vacancies in Paris and Lyon, France. In this role, you'll coach cross-functional teams to deliver cutting-edge digital products, leveraging Agile, data analytics, AI, and lean UX. Enjoy a hybrid work model, a competitive salary, and the opportunity to thrive in a collaborative, innovative environment. Are you interested? Sign up on Scrum Match and sprint toward your dream job on scrummatch.com.
You mentioned earlier an example of like customer signups, let's say. So if signing up new customers was the overarching strategy, and that's what was coming down from the top to the teams to say the number one measure of success we're going to use is new customer signups. And having that clarity, would that help a team make a decision?
Potentially, it at least would enable finding ideas how to do that. Like getting together as a team and understanding, okay, this is the goal. What can we do? What are the options we have? And then see, okay, what's the first thing we can try? What's an experiment we can run to see if that moves us in the right direction? So that already gives a lot of clarity. If we know this is the goal, we can then start being creative about how to achieve this. So I would say it helps, but of course we also need the data to understand where are we today, and also understand why do people not sign up. We need to know like how many people come to our website. We need to know where they where they leave the website, so that we can optimize also the steps towards the sign up, like the funnel, if you want.
Yeah. Okay. And one of the things that I'm feeling is like if I were to tell a couple teams I'm working with, like here's that example for them, right? Like let's say it's new customer signups. I could predict with pretty high accuracy not everyone, some people would really find that useful to be like, oh, that's interesting and all this. And if I then went and pulled up their backlog and said, okay, understanding that's the overall directive that we need to focus on right now, what do we want to do in the next 2 weeks? Many of them would struggle to see like, well, we can't worry about customer signups right now. We're still building the thing. We're still fixing bugs. We're still improving this and building this foundational thing. So we can't care about that. Or they may think that connection to kind of the next big milestone is they're too far removed from it. So is there any practical advice you would have for that type of situation?
First of all, for me, I'm always for focus. So if the team has a lot of other topics ongoing at the moment, they should not they should not take on another topic to try to figure that out as well, because that will make them slower on all of the goals they are pursuing. But we can have an honest discussion. What are we doing right now? And I have that with a client of mine right now. Like what did we do here? Why did it take so long? And what did we learn? Do we learn from that for the next thing? Not to take on another topic, but saying, okay, this is the scope of this task we are currently doing, and we don't allow it to become bigger and bigger because it would be nice to also do this and do that. But to say, okay, this is what we want to achieve here. Once we have it achieved, we know that there's more and we can do better there, but we move on to the next big topic that currently has the highest impact. So, and discussing that. And also, like you mentioned, fixing bugs has a value. And I'm always, or not always, but most of the time, I'm advocating for a zero bug policy. So if there's a bug, we fix it, because that reduces customer experience and it increases noise for the team. It increases distractions. It frustrates people. It's creating more work for customer success. So the cost of having a bug potentially is very high. If there are always bugs and we don't get to do anything else, then we have a discussion about quality and figure out how can we improve the quality that less bugs are creeping in. And usually bugs are a consequence of teams being pushed to move too fast and not pushing back enough and saying, no, we cannot ship before we have tested it, for example.
Right. Well, you've mentioned some practical techniques. So, without sharing too much of your conference talk, are there named and structured ways of making decisions that you advocate for, or is it more general, like principles in mind? Because I know I've had a lot of good luck over the years with a number of these decision-making tools and frameworks, and a lot of teams, even today in 2025, are surprised to hear that there are well-traveled, well-known, well-executed ways to make decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's basically why this talk exists, right? This is what I also see, that we are making decisions by like accident, more or less, or if we cannot decide as a group, we say, okay, the boss has to decide. And then the boss or we don't say that, but the boss at some point says, this takes too long. I decide we do this. But this doesn't help, because it doesn't help people to make better decisions. It just overrules whatever happens there. And so there are specific tools. There are tools on the individual level, of course, but this talk is more about the group decision making. And there is, for example, the systemic consenting, just to name one, where in a group we check the resistance of everybody against options to understand how we stand, how we see certain options in the group, and then we find the option with the lowest resistance, and that's probably the first or best thing we can try. And this is a very visual, very structured, very algorithmic in a way kind of approach. And another thing that I really like, and I would wish more companies to have, is an advice process, or like a tension-based proposal process, which we can use for architectural changes, but also for organizational changes. And it basically is, if somebody senses a tension in the organization with how it is and how it could be, they write it down. That's the first step. We write it down. I have this tension that we discuss things in the daily that don't make any sense to me. And then they also write a proposal. And my proposal would be to split the team, because we have two different teams that don't really have a lot of things in common, but they are still one team because they grew historically. And then we can assess the risks and write down these are the risks. This is what we can do about them. This is a change. We can reverse it if it doesn't plan out as we think. And then they get feedback from people in the organization on this written document. And maybe even objections. If somebody says, no, this will cause damage, this will be catastrophic if we do it, we should not do it. And then they can improve this proposal until the objections are resolved. And then it's just accepted and the company starts to work in that way. And this way, everybody can drive a decision, but include everybody who might have knowledge about it, might give feedback on it. For example, if it's a decision affecting financials, it could be a decision about hiring a new person. That's maybe a decision that has financial implications. So we might involve a person from finance there who can give feedback on, we cannot really do this also. But it allows everybody to drive the decisions, and we don't wait on leadership. Plus, we have it documented. Once the decision is in action, we have it documented and we understand why we made the decision, what was the context, and that helps people in the future to understand why the company works the way it works. So you can think of it like architecture decision records for the organization.
I love this idea. Not to go too granular in it, but so this document people authored to describe the tension in the proposal, where do they put it? Like, is that distributed via email or Teams, or what have you seen work?
So the best thing that works is having a company knowledge base, having like a company wiki. Could be a Notion, could be even Confluence if it has to be, like something where you can persist things, where you can search things, and where you can find the things again. And ideally, it's something where everybody has access to. I mean, there might be a phase where you share it only with some people first to get some early feedback. Hey, I don't know, this is my tension. Should I make it public, or should we discuss it first in another group? And then ultimately you make it public. Again, the default to open, making things as transparent as they can be, so people understand why things happen on the organization. Because then when they have attention, they can either create a proposal, or they can read through what's already there and understand maybe why things are the way they are. Because tensions are not always resolved by change. They can also be resolved by just understanding why things are as they are.
Okay.
And that makes people more satisfied in an organization and gives them the ownership about things. Because if I don't like something, I can change it, or I can at least initiate the change.
Yeah. I really like this idea. And you mentioned another one of kind of looking for the amount of resistance to something. I think that's a really good technique. So how do you gauge the amount of resistance? Like, is it something like sending a survey with a 1 to 5 or 1 to 7 scale about how much you oppose a certain decision, or what could that look like?
You could do it as an anonymous survey. Maybe that's sometimes helpful, but the way I usually do it is indeed in a meeting in the team. If we discover a problem and we want to find a good way forward as a team, but somehow it's not obvious what that is, we write down the problem, we write down the options, and we have kind of a visual table for everybody where every team member gives the voting, and then we can also discuss it. If somebody says, I have a resistance of 5 against this, and somebody else says, I have a resistance of 1, we might be able to discuss it to understand why the resistance is so high, because maybe that person is the same or is seeing something that somebody else isn't seeing, and then we know we can discuss it. And we also know if we have a lot of options that are very similar in their resistance, we might not have found a good enough option, or all of them are equally bad, but at least we as a team now understand, well, it doesn't really matter, we won't find the perfect solution. And then we can, my favorite decision making option probably is just throwing a dice or flipping a coin. Just if we cannot find a clear winner of the options, sometimes maybe they are all equally good or bad, and we don't know what will work out best in the future, but we can only find out by going there. So we need to just take one and execute. Ideally, we take one where we can do an experiment and fail safe in a way, so that we can then fix it and improve the decision later.
Yeah. Is part of your talk or just your approach to this, have you heard of the concept of like door 1 and door 2 type decisions, which is made famous a lot, I think, by Amazon?
I think one of them were reversible and the other one were not reversible. Was it this?
Yeah, there's very few decisions in life that I think are irreversible. So I think of it more as there are those decisions we make that are easily reversible quickly without a lot of pain, expense, or disruption. And then there are ones that are maybe truly irreversible or just painful, expensive, or time consuming. So is part of your suggestions to teams to kind of separate or discuss what's the impact of making this decision wrong?
Yeah, it's definitely part of it. I mean, in the attention-based proposal process, we have usually a question about the risk. Can it cause harm? Is it reversible? What's the cost of not doing it versus doing it? So we can understand that. And also that's something, once we choose an option, we still have the possibility to not do it completely, but maybe find a smaller and safer thing to try. So maybe we don't need to split the entire team right now, but we can maybe just work as sub-teams and have separate dailies for a month before we announce that split officially, but we then know this works well for us or this doesn't work well for us. Running things in experiments is also, for me, a game changer in getting acceptance for decisions, because if people know if we don't like it, we can always reverse it. People are far more willing to try it out. So experiments are, for me, the way to go. If we can do it, that's not always possible, but if we can, then that helps a lot, only by not saying this is a decision forever, but this is an experiment. Let's see how it goes. Let's collect feedback in 2 or 4 weeks, and then we know, does it help us? And also having these decision-making process in place helps then people to accept decisions, because they know if they don't like how it turns out, they can drive another change to improve the situation even further.
Nice. Well, Toby, I want to begin wrapping up, and your talk sounds really, really interesting. I think I'm going to try and attend, and I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing some of your practical techniques and just observations on this. So one of the things we do in here is we have been asking people a Gen AI question of the day. So I just gave my friendly AI bot a prompt about you and your topic and said, give me a great question to ask Toby. And so here's what it says verbatim. In today's fast-paced and often high-pressure corporate environment, how do you balance data-driven decision-making with the need for human judgment and intuition?
Okay, you can tell.
That's a good question, right? Like that.
It's a good question, but in today's fast-paced world gave it away as a Gen AI question right from the beginning. But that's a good question, and honestly, the answer is it probably depends, and we need to find the balance there. But usually, I would say there are challenges or situations where just looking at the data is clearly enough, and just a data-driven decision, something we could put in an algorithm, right? But then there are things that require judgment because they are about uncertainty, about future, and so on. And everything, for example, product management decision usually requires a lot more gut feeling than only data. So the question how to answer this, for me, it depends. If a company is very data-driven and does everything based on data, probably they need more intuition in it. But if a company doesn't have any data at all and just makes it by intuition, I would say let's get some data to see at least, because data is important not only for making the decision, but also to understand if we are moving in the right direction once we made the decision. So if we are not having that, I'm sometimes working with companies who don't have any metrics, any product insights at all, then we are basically completely blind about what we are achieving and if we are moving in the right direction. So that's that. But there is a risk in just looking in the data and just because sometimes data cannot tell us something. And for me, what I usually say is just because we can measure something doesn't mean it's meaningful or it's important. And sometimes the things that are most important are not easy to measure. Take customer satisfaction, or customer value. It's sometimes very hard to measure, at least in the instant. Over the long term, we might get insights, but in the instant, it's very hard to measure. But it's much more important than velocity, for example.
Right. I love that. So I think to sum that up is if a company's default position is to have a lot of data and use data heavily, they need to develop skills and expertise of intuition and human judgment. And if the opposite is true, they may need to develop data-driven skills. I think that's a great way to sum it up, to help companies balance those two things. Mm-hmm. And as a very lightweight amateur gambler, I understand that, like in games, like poker, for example, is you do have some information, but you never have all the information. Like I don't get to go around all my opponents and say, show me your cards before I make a decision. Yeah. So even having data doesn't mean you're going to make the right decision, because there's always, I don't care if it's the stock market or poker or deciding on tech. Like one of my teams right now is building a piece of technology heavily built on Azure and Microsoft and a few other big suppliers' infrastructure. You can't control their roadmaps. Yeah. So I've been advising them, like, you can make the best decision you can with the information you have, but you can't control what Amazon does or what Microsoft does. So protect yourself as best you can, but don't let it paralyze you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also there is, you probably know the Kinefin framework or Kinefin. So the area where we currently are also makes it necessary to have different ways of approaching decision. For example, if you are in a simple context, data-driven might work very well. But if we are in a complex context, then we first need to try in order to get more information. And then we need the intuition, because we don't have the data in the beginning. So we need to rely more on our intuition and say, okay, let's try this out. And we try it, and then we learn. And we get the information only after we try, not before.
Right. Now, I love that connection to Kinefin and sense making. So, Toby, thank you very much. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with before we sign off?
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure talking with you. This is a very important topic for me and for my clients and for the people I work with. I know for you it's similar. So I hope this is interesting for everybody, and I'm looking forward to see everybody at the conference.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And it was very enlightening for me as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
That is all for today. Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, let us know by hitting that like button. Share it with friends and colleagues, sharing a message on LinkedIn, joining our warm and welcoming Discord community, or attend recordings as a virtual audience. You can find all the relevant links in the show notes. We hope you'll tune back in for the next episode of the Mastering Agility podcast.